Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Rochelle Rosario, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about sexual consent and victim blaming. The definition of consent is basically agreeing to do something and to give permission. I was watching a Red Table Talk last year and DeAndre Levy and Amber Rose explain consent really well in these clips.
I'm DeAndre Levy, former NFL linebacker and advocate for sexual consent. I would define consent as an uncoerced, freely given yes that can be redacted at any time. And not taking it personally if you do get a no. It's not an indictment on your manhood, your masculinity if you're denied sex.
Also, if you see that her body language is uncomfortable, just ask her. Most of the time we don't want to hurt people's feelings, and so we put ourselves in situations where we're scared to say no because we don't want someone to feel embarrassed, we don't want to be talked about negatively after, and we don't want to hurt your feelings. So if you feel like she's uncomfortable, simply just ask her if she's okay with what you're doing in that moment. My advice for men that don't really understand what consent is a hard yes. That's it. If she says yes, then it's a go. But just remember, at any point after that yes, she is allowed to say no.
An example of victim blaming is when there's an attitude towards the victim, like the assault was their fault and that they should be held accountable rather than the perpetrator, the attacker. Now, with this video, I just want to bring awareness, hopefully help end the stigma and help others feel less alone. So please feel free to share with anyone you think might resonate. And as always, I'm talking purely from my own experiences. What I believe in, you might not agree with, and what works for me might not work for someone else. Now, with my past experiences, my perpetrators have always been men, but I know not all men are violent. And I'm going to share a couple clips with you now from Ben Hurst and Dr. Jessica Taylor.
Not all men are violent, but the majority of violent acts are carried out by men. Women all around the world feel more safe around other women than they do around men. In our schools, in our universities, in our places of work, and even in our households, women suffer on a daily basis. They experience abuse by the hands of men. This stuff is not happening because of women. And so it's men's job to resolve these issues.
And we just got to clear something up. So if I put, a post up saying 97% of all sex offenders are men, and then the comments underneath are all like, not all men. No, I know. I didn't say that. I said 97% of sex offenders are men. I didn't say 97% of men are sex offenders. You have to read things to understand them. So when we say 97% of this group of criminals are men, you can't ignore that. You can't go, well, not all men. No, we know that because you're arguing against the point that we're not making. The point that we're making is that sex offences are overwhelmingly committed by men, and they are overwhelmingly committed towards women and girls. So you're not all men bullshit. It doesn't work because it's not even related to the argument.
And for anyone that wants to pipe up and say, well, what about men? It's like me campaigning to save the turtles and you said, well, what about whales? What about dolphins? If it means that much to you, please feel free to create a video yourself. And like I said, I'm here to talk about my experiences, and that stems from male violence. Now, I've been wanting to create this video for months. I had a bad experience last August, which was a huge trigger for my post-traumatic stress. But when I started to get better and get my strength back, all I kept thinking was, I need to raise more awareness about these subjects. And I'm hoping for anyone who finds it difficult to communicate how they're feeling, this video will be something easy to forward and share with others, because believe me, I'll be forwarding it to certain people myself. Okay, so August, long story short, I met this guy. His name's Stanley, codename. He was a friend of a friend, and he took a liking to me, and he was on me. He kept on offering me a lift home, which didn't feel right to me because at that time, I lived a good hour and a half drive away. I was wearing my nan's wedding ring. I was showing no interest, but he was very persistent and still continued to move to me. And it got to a point where I felt so uncomfortable. I went to leave the room, and that's when he got physical with me. Thankfully, someone walked in, because God knows how far he would have gone. And I think, well, what if I actually did get in his car? And after that experience, I experienced trauma reactivation, which is another way of basically your PTSD being triggered. I would have nightmares every night, every nap. And, I suffer with bad dreams and nightmares anyway, but this became, extremely disturbing and very severe. I went back on sleeping pills. I was shouting in my sleep. I was suffering with sleep paralysis. And just a quick note on sleep paralysis while I'm here, a tip that really helps me is, as much as I can't move my body, I can just about move my jaw, and I bite my tongue really hard so that the pain wakes me up out of the nightmare. And I know that seems a bit extreme and a bit intense, but it's what works for me, and I'm open to other suggestions. I also had flashbacks from acts of violence from my past, and having all this resurface again, it was soul destroying. And by the way, all of these are actually trauma responses. Dr. Jessica Taylor says flashbacks, nightmares, chest pains, headaches, stomach pains, they're all normal. Trauma is hard to deal with, so it's your body doing its job, it's responding. It's not mental illness, it's post-traumatic stress, not disorder. And I wanted to share for those who pass judgment to me and other women and girls saying, we're mentally ill or mentally unwell. My friends and my doctors told me to report it. They said it's serious, it's classed as an assault with sexual motive, because they're worried that he was going to do the same again. Because it doesn't matter if it wasn't rape and there wasn't penetration, you're still putting your hands on me and you're still touching me without my consent. It's still a violation. One of my friends called him a rapey scumbag, and I was like, yes, that is him. Now, when the altercation happened, I froze, and I want to talk about this in more depth. Half for the victim blamers and half for other women and girls, to reassure them that freezing is a completely normal and involuntary trauma response of the body, done in an attempt to be safe and survive. It's how the brain responds to fear and danger. There's fight, flight, freeze, friend, and flop. So this is Dr. Jessica Taylor's book. I've typed up parts from it that I'm going to use throughout the video, and some is from the book and some is from her social media. And please know, for anyone who's got similar symptoms to me with like lack of focus and lack of concentration, like this book took me 6 months to read. Like post-traumatic stress and brain fog is real. It takes me a lot longer to read nowadays. Anyway, there's ample research that suggests that once the brain has developed a response to sexual trauma, it will repeat that response in all sexual traumas in an effort to minimize harm and to do what worked last time, therefore experiencing a natural self-preservation response to their experience. And over 70% of women who are raped or sexually assaulted will freeze, which makes it the most common trauma response to sexual violence. Stop asking why she didn't fight back. It's not a normal or common response to sexual violence. It is an adaptive survival tactic to reduce further damage to the body. Like I said earlier, I froze when it came to Stanley, and I've actually frozen before during a sexual assault, and I never understood why, because I always looked at myself as someone who would fight back, plus I love boxing. I'm not looking to go in the ring or anything like that, but the one thing that puts me off training more and going to do self-defense classes is that it actually doesn't guarantee that I won't freeze again.
I am going to be talking to you about the freeze response. And basically, the most common way that women and girls respond to being raped or abused is to freeze. So there's this myth that you're supposed to, fight back, scream for help, or do something. But studies, across the last 2 decades, and specifically a very large study in 2017 by Muller et al., found that 70%, just over 70% of women and girls who are raped will freeze during the offence. So it's completely normal, and it's the most common thing to happen. It's actually really rare to be able to fight off a rapist or abuser. So we shouldn't be putting pressure or expecting women and girls to have fought that perpetrator off when the majority of us don't do that. We freeze to sort of keep ourselves as safe as possible in the moment.
A few friends have told me that they can sense my vulnerability. Trust me, that is the last thing someone wants to hear. And Jessica explains that sex offenders can target girls because of their smile, body shape, not knowing about their vulnerabilities. Some don't care at all. They'll just do it because they can. Some offenders actually enjoy hurting confident and assertive, healthy women. They say it's part of the fun. They get a kick out of controlling, belittling, and humiliating her. Perpetrators will harm women and girls for one reason, because they want to, and they've chosen to do it. It's not all about vulnerabilities. One friend told me I need to be more assertive, and I told him about a fight that I had years ago with a man. He was really strong, and I ended up on the floor multiple times. But every time I was on the floor, I'd get back up and I'd fight back. And at the time, my friends were like, I shouldn't have fought back. I should have walked away. And I'm like, I can't fucking win. Do you want me to be assertive or not? My friend Sophie, codename, and her boyfriend, that's whose house the Stanley incident happened. Sorry, that's whose house I was at when the Stanley incident happened. They say to me, you're strong, you'll be okay. And it's so dismissive. It's like, even though my past and my traumas don't define me, they're still a part of me. Some days I feel like a victim. Some days I feel like a survivor. It's not down to you to assume or judge how the fuck I'm feeling. They'd say, you're a pretty girl, you're always going to get this. Always going to get this. So what, I should just accept it as my reality? No. And then the classic, I just need to get myself a girlfriend. I know 3 of my friends who have experienced domestic violence from a female, so that's some bullshit advice right there. And everything they're saying is like, it's my problem, I'm responsible and I need to sort it out. And it reminds me of a couple of years ago when I was assaulted. I had one friend, she sent me statistics of the rates of violence in my area and actually said to me, like, I told you it's not a safe area. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? Because think about all the domestic violence, all the relationships and marriages, which has nothing to do with their area. It's like saying to someone sitting alone in their home and they've been broken into, assaulted, and then you coming back to them being like, oh, well, you should have had a stronger lock. You should have had an alarm. I didn't even react to my friend straight away. It took a minute for it all to sink in. And I was telling my therapist what was happening, and she was like, this is awful. This is victim blaming. And I was like, what is victim blaming? I've never heard of it before. And I Googled it and I was like, oh my God, I've been hearing this bullshit for years. The good old, oh, what was you wearing? Was you having a drink? Yeah, well. And it's like, so what? If I'm wearing a short skirt and I'm having a drink, I'm asking for it. Who the Shimon asks to be assaulted? Are you listening to yourself? And I'm so tired of hearing it now. I've experienced various acts of violence, different men, different times of my life. And the attitude is, so what are you doing? What are you doing to attract all this? And it's like, you think I'm doing something? You need to stop asking me and start asking the perpetrators. Women don't get attacked because of their actions. They get attacked because of the actions of the attacker. And we need to stop asking women. No, we need to stop asking why women are vulnerable. We should be asking why these men are violent. Acknowledge the reality of male violence against women and talk about it. Again, not all men, and I'm going to share a clip now from Gina Martin's TED Talk.
It will say this, it will say, not all men. And to that I'll say this. No, not all men, but too many. Too many men, for some reason, feel entitled to women and marginalised genders' bodies. Too many men, whether through action or inaction, are perpetuating a culture of sexism that breeds inequality, and that leads to violence. And if you want to use the phrase, not all men, how about we use it like this? Not all men are calling out their friends when he says something to a woman he would never say to a guy. Not all men are looking up these phrases, learning what rape culture really is, how misogyny really operates. And no, not all men are perpetrators, of course they're not. But all the ones who aren't should be solving this with us. Because maybe if they were, we'd be living in a society when I talk to guys or male politicians about sexual violence, they want to solve it with me more than they want to prove that they're not the problem.
I agree, not all men. The problem is we don't know which ones to look out for. We can't judge by looking at you or for even talking to you for 5 minutes. So until we know for sure, we're going to have our guard up and look at everyone as a potential threat. A lot of the time as well, these acts of violence come from men that you already know and even trust. There's a quote that I saw which says, "No, not all men. But if I gave you a box of Maltesers and told you that 1 in 10 of them was actually a nugget of shit rolled into a ball and dipped in milk chocolate, you'd be wary of them all, wouldn't you?" That's what I want people to get their head around. Not one thing will change until the perpetrators change. We need to challenge victim blaming every single time it happens. And people can actually contribute to someone taking their life. You know, you should have done this, you should have done that. My mind goes to, well, I might as well not be here anymore if this shit keeps on happening to me and it's my fault. Talking to me about sexual violence prevention. And I think, oh, I know what will solve it. Suicide. Because that way I won't be here anymore for anything to happen again. In Dr. Jessica Taylor's book, it says, Campbell, 2001, observed a cumulative effect in that the more negative responses from the support network, i.e. friends, family, doctors, the more severe the psychological harm was to the woman. Only the negative reactions from the support network were strongly and consistently related to increased psychological harm and delayed recovery. Negative responses had the biggest impact on their psychological well-being and their propensity to develop depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and other health issues. And as much as I've made progress recently, things haven't been the same since August. My insomnia has got worse. I've been on sleeping pills since August, which is annoying because I worked fucking hard to come off them in 2019. And even with pills, you know, I still get bad dreams. I can still wake up in the middle of the night. Don't assume that sleeping pills equals a good sleep. I just use them to help me drift off. And my energy levels have been so temperamental. I haven't been able to work again. I haven't been well enough to teach classes again since August. And it's so disheartening because, again, I worked fucking hard for my qualifications. It's a job that I love. It gives me purpose. It's how I make money to do nice things and enjoy life, because there's some days where I feel like I'm existing and not living. And is Stanley or any of these other pricks that have hurt me and caused my PTSD going to reimburse me for my loss of earnings? And it's so discouraging when people assume just because it happened months ago or years ago, I should be better by now. Listen, there is no timeline when it comes to healing. I think of my friends that still talk to Stanley. I mean, they're not my friends anymore. And I think, would they still be talking to him if I took my life? I bet then they would have taken it seriously, but it shouldn't have to get to that point. And I know they would have been like, oh, I wish she called us and told us. I did. And I've been saying to my best friend Jaded for a long time now, since I started suffering from suicidal thoughts. I say to her, if you see these kind of friends at my funeral, please feel free to tell them about themselves, because don't you dare come to my funeral and cry when you weren't there in my time of need. Because I've noticed over the years, when I'm at my best and I'm smashing it with my goals, I have all the love and support. But when I'm ill and can't get out of bed, fucking tumbleweed. And it's mad because looking back, I'm usually the one that reaches out and makes the effort to go and see people in their area. So I'm going to share the messages between me and Sophie because I think there's a lot that we can learn from it. Now, this girl, Sophie, I really classed her as a close friend. I loved her to bits. We had over 10 years of friendship. And just a heads up, she's also a girl who has experienced trauma from her past. Trauma as in anything from an abandonment, a robbery, or a car accident. And because of that, I naively thought that she was going to be more understanding and just supportive as a friend. So like I said, the Stanley incident happened in her house in August. I told her what happened, and then the next time I heard from her was December when she invited me out for drinks or something. I've written the most important bits on here and changed the names because I don't want to slip up reading it from my phone. So when she's invited me out for these drinks in December, I've replied, "Thank you for the invite. I need my space from you though. I was really upset after the Stanley situation and was in a bad way. You know I've got PTSD. And yeah, I spoke to you to tell you what happened, but I haven't heard from you since, which really hurt me. Especially where it all happens at your house. And then I find out Stanley was back at your house 2 weeks later. That just says it all in itself. If something like that happened in my house, I would have gone fucking mad, especially if I had my kids upstairs who could have potentially walked in and see that happen. Anyway, in hindsight, the way you spoke to me actually made me see a different side to our friendship. I was crying my eyes out, telling you about my insomnia, nightmares, flashbacks, sleep paralysis, and you lot are telling me I just need to get myself a girlfriend. Nah, mate, you need to hold Stanley accountable. You think I need to change my sexuality because of the actions of some prick. And yes, I was uploading shit on social media, my vlogs, etc. But those were all filmed before the incident and my videographer hadn't finished the editing till after. I was uploading all of that from my bed, not showering for days, suicidal thoughts every day. Also, when you said, "I'm not defending Stanley, but I'm sure if he knew about your past and that you had PTSD, he wouldn't have done that. He shouldn't be doing that anyway." You made comments like, maybe he thought I was playing hard to get. I'm a grown woman. If I want to sleep with someone, I will. I can do whatever I want. But after the shit I've been through, trust me, he ain't the type of person I'd want to be intimate with. And she replied, "I'm sorry you feel this way. That was never my intention." The classic, most scripted apology of all time. She goes, "Time has flown by, blah, blah, blah. I told you, you only have to call if you need me. I should call you, even that happened in your house, and I've made it clear to you that I'm fucking struggling." Okay. She says, "If my only clues about how you're feeling come from your social media, then I can't be blamed for thinking you're okay." I'm going to share a few photos and stories now that I uploaded during that time. If I'm uploading rape quotes every other day, how are you thinking I'm okay? And it just shows the reality of our friendship anyway, because a real friend would reach out regardless of what I'm posting. She says, "It's sad that you're blaming us for how you're feeling, so I guess it's right that we keep our distance. FYI, I didn't ever blame her for how I was feeling. I'm feeling this way because Stanley put his hands on me because of my existing PTSD." I don't know what she's talking about. Lastly, she goes, "You do realise you're saying all this to someone who has experienced trauma, so I'm pretty disappointed that you chose to say this to me in a message rather than call me and talk. Yet, Sophie, that makes it worse. You know, pretty disappointed in me. You should be pretty disappointed in yourself that you've experienced trauma and this is your way of showing compassion and empathy." And I think, yeah, and I'm not going to call you because my respect and trust for you has gone out the window. And thank the Lord Jesus Christ of Nazareth I didn't call you, because if I heard all that victim blaming shit again, I probably would have topped myself. And the whole thing with still posting on social media, my vlogs, etc., honestly, it was actually really good timing, because looking back, it gave me purpose for a little while and helped me to keep going that little bit longer, because I kept thinking, gosh, I worked so hard to create these vlogs. Let me upload them before I do what I want to do. And the rape quotes and stuff, like, I was just having a rant, and it felt good because I wanted to spread the word on how shit this victim blaming is. So anyway, with the whole Sophie thing, don't think I'm sitting here bitter. I haven't got the energy to fight with her. I don't want to make amends either. That's why I've been using code names since my first vlog, purely for examples, because I know how much others will be able to resonate. Another reason why I'm sharing this is to let people know it's okay to distance yourself from loved ones. It's okay to set boundaries. Your well-being is so important and should always come first. I started a new role recently, which I'll get into in a minute, but I know I wouldn't have the strength and the confidence and resilience to do the work that I'm doing now if I was surrounding myself with people like that. It's all about quality over quantity. Just because you've been friends for over 10 years doesn't mean they're a friend for life. And it definitely doesn't mean they have any loyalty to you. Over the years, I'm learning more and more that friends are here for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. Some mutual friends have suggested reconnecting with certain people, and I'm like, nah, for what? For a sit down? For closure? I rarely believe in closure. I've seen everything I need to from your actions, mate.
Closure is just you wanting a verbal explanation for something they've already showed you. Move on.
I don't really believe in everything happens for a reason, more so in timing. I feel like timing is everything. And last year I had a job opportunity to work with an organisation that is female only, survivor led, and I was hesitant at first. I thought, oh, is this going to be a trigger for my mental health? And I just wasn't ready. And a week after Sophie's message, the organisation reached out again regarding the same job, and I was like, fuck yes, I'm ready, because if this is a society that we're living in, I got to make a change somehow. You know, this is disgusting and completely unacceptable. So now I'm thankful for Sophie, because her message turned out to be good timing and she actually motivated me. And the woman who put me forward for the role, she knows me already. She knows my morals and my values and my work ethic. And I had to ask her, like, do you vet these girls? Because there's so many people who have experienced trauma but can be victim blamers themselves. Thankfully, during this time in August, I was already in therapy, and my therapist, she's amazing. And I started speaking to her last year purely for my nightmares, and she specialises in sexual violence. I also knew about the right helplines to call, which was such a good support for the times where I was close to taking my life. And therapists, I know they can be hit and miss, like I explained in my last vlog, and it can take time to meet the right one. For example, I met a therapist before who suggested I forgive my perpetrators and that it would help with my healing and I'll feel free. And I'm like, why do we have to forgive? And is there any evidence to show that it works? I believe it's individual preference, like each to their own. Certain things will help people with their recovery. Trust your gut and do what's best for you. Me personally, I know if I forgave my perpetrators, I wouldn't feel any different. It's just not part of my journey or healing, and therapists and people in general need to respect that.
I think a lot of pressure on women and girls to forgive their abuser, to move on. And I'm definitely one of the psychologists that says I don't think that you should ever have to forgive the abuser or the rapist or the trafficker. I don't think you should ever have to seek that. I don't think that's part of your journey necessarily. There's no reason to ever forgive them. I think it's more about focusing on yourself and your well-being and what you get out of it than ever having to forgive somebody else. I often think that when you're pushed to forgive a rapist or an abuser, that's more about what somebody else wants you to do than what's in your best interests. For some people, they claim that forgiveness makes them feel better about it, but I don't ever want women and girls to feel pressured to forgive, as if you can't move on unless you've forgiven the man who did it to you. I don't agree with that at all, and there's no research that backs that up.
One of the worst things with trauma reactivation is being sleep deprived. It is fucking hard and is a big reason behind my suicidal thoughts. When I'm in that frame of mind, I like to be by myself in my bubble, no pressure, no stress, because I can become overwhelmed easily. That's why I like to be in my bed. And not a lot of people, or people might not agree, but that's what worked for me at that time. And my therapist, she explained to me self-care is priority over EMDR therapy after trauma reactivation. Stabilizing comes first. And looking back, it does make sense, because the incident happened in August and I wasn't ready to do EMDR till November. And I feel like there's a lot of misjudgment to going slow, but thinking about the long run, I remember the story of the hare and the tortoise, and I remind myself, slow and steady wins the race. My therapist, she also taught me about honouring my feelings. When I wasn't well enough to get up and out of bed, I bought myself this colouring book for adults called End Victim Blaming. And it was really therapeutic, and it helps me feel productive for those days. Like, as much as I couldn't get out of bed, when I'm colouring something and I see the pretty picture after, it made me feel like I'd done something that day. Brene Brown says, adversity is helpful to build courage and stamina, but we don't need trauma. Trauma doesn't build tough people. Trauma sets people back. And I wanted to share this voice note that I sent to my friend a week after the incident.
Hi, babe. Bless you. Thank you so much for your voice note and for being so understanding, and just for being there without any judgments. And I know that you and Jack are here as a support. It means a lot. I'm not sleeping great. I don't sleep great anyway, but I've been taking sleeping pills. My nightmares have got so much worse. I've been having sleep paralysis every day, and even shouting in my sleep. When my nightmares are so bad, I'm shouting in my sleep and waking myself up.
And my phone's on loud. And Alicia's response was so understanding, no judgment. She would say things like, if you want to stay in bed for a week, you can stay in bed for a week, that's okay. And it was really nice, and it made me see if I was ever in a bad way again in the future, she's definitely a friend that I would want to reach out to. Because yes, I'm strong, and yes, I've been through worse, but it does still chip away at me, at my strength, at my self-esteem, at my confidence. What really changed my outlook as I got better was when my therapist spoke to me about post-traumatic growth instead of post-traumatic stress and recovery. And that word growth, it's like, well, yeah, because even me speaking now, I wouldn't have been this outspoken 10, 20 years ago, and I definitely wouldn't be creating a video. Also, while I'm here, I want to mention a few documentaries and books that I think will be really useful. If you've been through an experience where someone has harmed you or touched you without your consent, or you know someone who's struggling and you want to understand them better. So books, A Piece of Cake by Cupcake Brown and Know My Name by Chanel Miller. Documentaries, Audrey and Daisy, Athlete A and Brave Miss World. The Brave Miss World collection is the one that I resonate with the most. One of the reasons why I turned to that one in particular is because there's so many different stories, and you can see how each individual has coped through their experiences, and you can see not one person is the same.
Someone gave me the courage to speak out when I was raped. It was my mother. She never let me feel ashamed.
لينا وسيد إيمة وفاد علي وناس אותי וניסה לרצוח אותי. I can't forget this.
And there's nothing I wouldn't do. I'm sorry.
This work is bringing up a lot. I'm reopening my wounds.
So you will never admit to this crime?
No, ma'am. And I will go to fight.
אני לא רוצה שהוא ישתחרר בשום פנים ואופן, אני רוצה שהוא ישלם על מה שהוא עשה.
I'm here to see you through. Oh, I'm here to see you through. I'm here to see you through. You can't
with only one girl or two girls. This just has to be done.
It's a tough watch. It took me a day, but watching it, you know, I felt less alone, and I kind of took comfort in that. One of my favourite parts of the documentary was when Sarah was talking about her abuse to Lenore's mum. And Lenore's mum said, "It's not your fault. It's never. You can go naked on the beach and it's not your fault. No man has permission to touch you."
My name's Sarah. I'm the associate producer here in Italy for Lenore's film, and I was sexually abused when I was 11.
You know, I really think it was never my fault.
This is the point. It's not your fault. You understand? It's never. You can go naked in the beach. It's not your fault. No one has the permission to touch you.
And I thought, yes, this is the mindset I fucking wish more of us had. The next ones are not documentaries, but they are based on true events. I May Destroy You, Promising Young Woman, and Unbelievable.
This is not something people get over. This is something they carry with them forever.
From my own experiences and from speaking to other girls, I can see how much we already blame ourselves in some way. I've done it. I used to look back and think I shouldn't have been there, shouldn't have had a drink. What if I stayed at home? I wish I didn't go to that party. A girl in Jessica's book said, "I'd rather take responsibility for what happened, and then I feel more in control going forward." And I get it, like, you feel more in control when you think you can prevent it happening again. But it's not true. I've experienced acts of violence when I've been under the influence of alcohol. And then when I became sober, I thought, oh, nothing like that will happen again because I'm more aware of my surroundings and blah, 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 blah. But no, over 2 years into my sobriety, I experienced an act of violence again. Even with the Stanley situation, that day I was covered up, I was wearing my wedding ring. You know, it doesn't mean anything. But when women then make those changes and are still subjected to sexual violence, this contradicts the belief that women can stop sexual violence by changing themselves, resulting in a realization that the change didn't work. The reality is, the changes women make do not influence or change the actions, motivations, or histories of the sex offender. And the last thing you need is someone else shaming you, like a friend, a doctor, a therapist even. And before dishing out the advice and victim blaming, think, what are you actually going to achieve out of this? You know, put yourself in that other person's shoes. Is this necessary right now? And how would you like it if someone said this to you? And opinions, just because you think it doesn't mean you need to voice it, especially when the person is vulnerable. Every time we change a woman's behaviour or character to protect her from sexual or domestic violence, all we really do is make sure that it happens to another woman instead. We aren't tackling male violence by changing women. Think about it. We just individualise it to women. All we are really saying is, not this woman, target some other woman who isn't doing the right things. Changing a woman's behaviour is not addressing the issue. The perpetrator will just move on to someone else. The real issue and the root of the problem is always the perpetrator, not ever the victim. And I can do all the sexual violence prevention. All that means is, if he's not going to target me, he's going to target someone else instead. I'm not the root of the problem. Let me tell you why all those rape prevention campaigns that tell women not to go here, don't drink this, don't get in that taxi, don't wear that, etc., don't actually work, because you're talking to the wrong fucking person. Now, a lot of people complain about today's society, including myself, but we got to remember we are society, so let's start making these changes no matter how small. Let's begin at home. Like, just because there's consent classes at school nowadays, that doesn't mean that it's enough. And a lot of the time, these perpetrators that go to the classes, it don't mean shit to them anyway. If you're a prick, you're a prick. A lot of victim blamers I've come across are parents themselves. which is worrying because I think, gosh, is this how you would talk to your daughters and your poor sons as well? Is this how you're raising them to respect women and girls? Even my male friends now, they're older and should be wiser, but I'm still going to remind them about a lot of things. Like, for example, not all girls are playing hard to get. Don't fucking risk it. Look how the standing situation fucks me up.
I know what I can do. Like, I can talk to my nephews. They're the next generation. I can try to hold myself accountable. I can try to hold others accountable. How many times do we have, like, a male figure in their life, an older one, who's already telling them about girls, like, go do this to the girl, this is how you talk to the girl, do this, do that.
Hypermasculinity early on.
Exactly.
I think you can teach about consent when they're younger. That's not just about sexuality.
Right.
That's about asking someone, is this okay?
I try to do that, enforce that with my nephews when it's like, go give so-and-so a hug before you leave. I'm like, well, do you want to give them a hug? Do you want to?
The reality is that boys won't just be boys. Boys will be what we teach them to be. So we need to have So what we need to do is have the tough conversations.
1 in 10 men are shit and the other 9 do nothing. They might as well not fucking be there. Being good on the inside counts for absolutely fuck all. You have to actively be good and get involved. Instead of having this fucking hero complex of being like, I'm going to beat up a rapist, fucking prevent one, stop one, because I know it can be done, because I know how I fucking failed at it. Because if I'm being 100% honest with myself, were there signs in my friend's behavior over the years towards women that I ignored? The answer is yes. And then he raped my friend, and that's on me until the day I die. Talk to your fucking boys.
And men, please talk to your friends. You may not harm women yourself, but if you stay quiet when you find out your mates are doing it, then you're part of the problem. I read on Jamila Jamil's page, if you're not on the side of ending violence against women and girls, then you're on the side of allowing it. And if you allow it, then you condone it. If you condone it, you're part of the problem. Silence equals complicity.
We have a serious problem, and that's that men who don't rape or assault women don't think they're part of the problem. When we see worst case scenarios, we have a tendency to remove ourselves from them and go, okay, well, that's not me, so there's nothing that I need to do. But when 97% of women have been sexually harassed, and every woman you know has a story where she thought it could escalate to the point where she's the next news story, then even if you're a good guy, by not taking action, you're allowing it to continue.
People can copy behaviour from films, TV shows, music videos. You know, when girls play hard to get, they don't mean no. They mean try harder. Listen, no means no. It does not mean convince me. And girls that are playing hard to get, please let's stop this. Put whatever pride and ego you have to the side. It's misleading and confusing. If you're interested in a man, let him know. If you're not interested, let him know. And I know this isn't going to be realistic in all situations, but it should be okay for women and girls to be more assertive. We shouldn't be scared of how someone's going to react. We shouldn't worry about offending the person or hurting their feelings. I shouldn't need to wear my nan's wedding ring as an excuse. These guys should respect my answer when I say I'm not interested. And back to consent. Even with a man that you've already slept with, even if you've slept with him plenty of times before, doesn't give him the go-ahead to do anything with you again as and when they please. You feeling comfortable and you feeling ready comes first. And if you're having consensual sex with a boyfriend or your husband and halfway through it becomes uncomfortable or painful and you tell him to stop and he doesn't, that isn't consent. If you're having consensual sex with a guy and you're using a condom and he takes it off without your knowledge and without your permission, that isn't consent. There's one analogy I heard regarding consent and borrowing money, and it says, if you needed £10, you wouldn't just take it from someone, you'd ask, and then you'd ask again, are you sure? It's respect. And just because someone's given you £10 in the past doesn't mean they're going to give it to you again. I loved this part of Paris Hilton's documentary where she was taking pictures on the red carpet and this man asked if he could place his hand on her shoulder. It was so respectful.
Can I hold your shoulder, please?
Now, all these things I've spoken about in this vlog, it just shows we have got some work to do. We need to educate ourselves, each other, raise awareness, and start challenging and changing these outlooks towards women and girls. It's not right. Lastly, I'm going to leave you with this interview I watched with Amber Rose, Tyrese, and Rev Run, where Rev Run says, dress how you want to be addressed, as if to say, revealing clothes means that you're DTF, down to fuck. It's bullshit. Consent is verbal, not visual.